Welcome to another episode of Victoria's Lounge from the Tribe Hotel. Now, in conjunction with the Nation Leadership Forum that will be talking about women's economic empowerment, we've decided we'll do the same right here on the show. What's the economic state of the Kenyan woman in terms of access to finance, access to land, and other opportunities? Well, I have guests who are ready to delve into that discussion. Let's meet them now. Wanjiru Gathira is a social entrepreneur. Wikali Mudhiani is an HR consultant and managing director of Millennial HR. Banu Khan is from UN Women and is a women's economic empowerment expert. Majda Kabunge is the group HR manager at Diamond Property Merchants. Christine Mwea is the head of consumer banking at the Kenya Women's Financial Trust. Valentine Mwangi is the CEO of Zavaro Holdings and a beneficiary of KWFT. Anzetse Were is a development economist. Professor Wanjiku Amukabi Kabira is the director of African Women Studies Center at the University of Nairobi. Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation on social media as usual. Today we're talking about women's economic empowerment, and this actually is in partnership with the Nation Leadership Forum, which is talking about the same subject. So we decided let's have this conversation on the show. And why is it so important now? Why is it so important today? Well, I have some panelists here who are ready to delve into that subject. And as we open, I want to actually ask this question to everyone, just to get a sense of where women are economically here in Kenya. And Zetse, I'll begin with you. But in your view, what is the average Kenyan woman? What does she look like to you?
I think when you look at women's economic empowerment, the primary feature is that we tend to be locked in the informal economy. We tend to be locked in informal businesses. So if you look at the bulk of where women are sitting in terms of how they generate their income, that's generally where they tend to sit. And this tends to have negative implications for them. One, in terms of their own security. They don't have any security of tenure in terms of saying, this is my shop, this is where I sell my goods. They could be chased away. So losing their income is very easy. And another big problem for them is that they don't have access to finance, because banks do not lend to informal businesses generally because they're seen as high risk. So when you're looking at the way women make their money, that's one factor. And I think if you look at their capacity to save, that's another important issue you need to be aware of, is that often women don't save because often they're the ones doing the caring of the family. Right. Even if they do have a husband, there's sort of the notion that the husband's money is his own and the woman's money is for the family. So even getting women to a stage where they can save to move on economically, that can be quite difficult.
Wikali, in your view, what does the average Kenyan woman look like to you?
Most of them are in the informal sector, but also we've got a lot in the formal sector. And when you look at the formal sector, in the employment sector, you find that they would be in the middle level, lower level positions, and somehow never get an opportunity to grow, to be senior managers. And so they're just subjected to a bit of stagnation in their career. And so, yes, I would say the middle Kenyan woman is at the medium level of the economy or the employment place. And we need a serious strategy on how to really get women to the top, because I do know for sure that women do make great leaders. They connect very well with their audiences at the workplace. They're really able to connect with their employees and they build relationships better. But somehow they never get to be at the top.
What about you, Wanjiru?
I think the majority of women are smallholder farmers. If you look at Kenya, the percentage of smallholder farmers in the agricultural sector is about 70 to 80%, depending on what statistics you're looking at. And as a farmer myself, I work with those smallholder farmers, and they face real challenges. You know, what kind of seed should they get? You know, they don't have information about, you know, the climate. They don't have information about where to get loans to scale up their farms. And so they're stuck. They're really stuck at a micro level, and yet they're feeding the nation. So for me, even as a smallholder farmer, I'm planting capsicums against great odds. So once they're ready, what do I do? Where do I go? And that's the phase that I see in Kenya. Now the problem is men do more commercial type of agriculture. And I'm not saying men don't face challenges like women do, but we need to get women unstuck from the smallholder farmers of quarter acre, half an acre, to even coming together and forming associations. I know the word cooperative sometimes is not well accepted in Kenya, but we need to go beyond the smallholder to people who are actually feeding the nation and getting a benefit out of it. So I'm really interested to hear some of the solutions that we could come up with in this respect to take the face of the average Kenyan woman in Kenya from smallholder to somebody who's getting money in their pockets and being able to feed their families.
Absolutely. And Banu, you interact a lot with these issues at UN Women. In your view, from what you've seen, what is the average Kenyan woman? What does she look like?
Over 51% of our current population is made up of women. For me, this is half the sky, half the talent of what we have as an asset for this country. However, unfortunately, this talent is currently untapped. It's a huge untapped potential, whether the woman is in the formal sector of the economy or whether she is in the informal sector of the economy. And I agree with all the previous speakers that the average woman in Kenya, majority are in the informal sector at the moment, and even they are at this bottom of the pyramid at the micro level, and how then do we pull them from this micro level to the next level is a big challenge. I think the good news is that more and more women are going into education. Prof is here. More and more women are coming out with degrees. More and more are entering into the labor force, which is great. Yeah. That was not the case a couple of years decades ago. But then again, the same scenario. They come in as equal with men, and now the growing trajectory, something happens. Men keep on growing, women grow to some extent, and then comes the downward trend.
And we'll definitely talk about some of those challenges as we move forward. But Christine, when we're hearing someone like Wanjiru saying women are stuck, they're trying to go to the next level, and a lot of times money is the biggest hindrance. If they don't have it, they can't move forward. KWFT has been very instrumental in helping women, but tell us more about at least the women that you interact with.
I would want to concur with most of the rest of the panelists that yes, the woman is mainly in the informal sector, but then we also, as KWFT, we also focus on her needs, and regardless of whether she sells her tomatoes by the roadside or whether she has a shop, we are willing to come and participate and partner with her. So for the last 37 years, we've seen a lot of trajectory in terms of growth from that woman who was kind of a little bit more not educated to a woman now who has a degree, who she has a name in this, where she lives or where she works. She has a family, she has a husband to take care of, but then she's also bringing in food to the table. So what we do as KWFT is we try to support regardless of her needs. We'll be looking at, I know she's talked about SME, we give loans as low as 10,000 shillings. And that really helps that woman who is in the informal sector who is imagining, I don't need 100,000 shillings, I only need 10,000 to buy some little merchandise here and there so that I'm able to sell. And from that 10,000, we've been able to see women growing and moving up to higher levels of SME. We may not have the SME numbers, but there's been a lot of change. And you've also asked about where is the current average Kenyan woman. Yeah. I would see from where we started from up to now, I look at the current Kenyan woman as a little bit more educated. She's aware of what is going on. The challenges that a woman faces, the perceptions and the attitude. Am I going to succeed? Right. If I start this business, will it have a longevity? I know somebody mentioned about 3 years. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities that are out there, and for us as KWFT, we've been able to partner with the women and see them grow, not only their business, but also from the profits that they get. Can they, improve their lifestyle? Can they afford to take their children to the university?
And definitely helping to support that economic empowerment narrative when it comes to women of, okay, there's the way she earns her money, and let's take it to the next level of how she controls that money and uses that money. You have been a beneficiary of KWFT, Valentine. Just take us through your experience as an entrepreneur, growing now your businesses and also your career as well.
When I was starting business, I was actually not really educated on money issues. I remember my first experience, I went to a particular bank and I needed money. I only needed 100,000. because I was starting up business. So I was taken to a desk somewhere at a corner, and I was given papers to sign, and then they told me they'd get back to me in 48 hours. I've never had or received a phone call from them, you see, until someone referred me to Kenya Women. They showed me how to fill up a form. They took me through the process of acquiring money from a bank, and they also taught me that when you're given money, you have to have the initiative to pay back that money. So for me, my journey was not easy from the beginning. And that's why I keep telling women, it's always good to get education on money, borrow money from banks and even other institutions, and manage it wisely.
But financial literacy, education, these are things that oftentimes we take for granted, but to empower the women, they need to know, okay, before I get this money, I need to know how to get it, one, how I'm going to use it, and like you said, paying it back, and having the money work for you. So let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. The conversation continues. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. We're talking about women's economic empowerment. So before we went to break, we were hearing from Valentine, and she raised a very important point, which was women being educated and being informed when it comes to money. And Prof, you are in that space, academia. What is happening there to ensure that at least not just the women, but the men as well, know how to manage finances? And of course, we've seen some of the challenges that they face when they don't have that information.
Now, about education and finances, even those of us at the university, before you retire, you are like maybe 3-4 years, they are calling you for training. But we have been saying, no, this is a bit late now to call me when I'm a bit to retire, to tell me about how to organize myself, how to do my small businesses, and so on when I leave the university. So I agree that education, like we say, education is power. And in fact, I'm so impressed. I really feel privileged to be in this group of young women who are out there, who are not stuck with the permanent jobs like myself, who has been at the university for 36 years, teaching there for 36 years.
Wow.
But who you have learned to actually take opportunities that are available and build your careers and so on, the different careers and so forth. So I think education is very, very important, and I think it's something we need even to teach, even in schools. I wish we could even translate the business studies in high schools and in universities to actually practical, practical courses that can actually give skills to the students when they leave these universities or high schools or even technical schools, with the knowledge that can make them make life for themselves instead of waiting for employment which is not available.
Maida, with Diamond Property Merchants, of course, this is now access to land. That has been a huge issue, especially here in Kenya. Women still owning, is it less than 1% of land? So what's happening, at least in terms of your institution, to change those statistics and numbers?
Land has started becoming scarce. But at Diamond, we try as much as possible to make sure that we have property that is available all the time. Currently, our current statistics at the company is 70% of the title deeds have women's name written on them. That is a plus. But still, the larger statistics shows 1%. That is just a part of the 1% in our country. So what is the issue? Finances has been a challenge. And you hear cases of these women going to banks. They want to get the loan to be able to acquire that asset. But the process becomes tedious. They don't understand simple terms like compound interest. What is this compound interest? So education, again, plays a role. Most women second guess, I can't own property. And the Constitution is so clear. We have that opportunity as women. Let us grab that opportunity.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the money factor, and let's say, because we've seen more of it needs to be in the hands of women. women think communally when it comes to money, yet they're not controlling much of it. Why is there a disconnect? If we need to move such a resource into their hands and that's not happening, why? And you also mentioned during the break an issue of trust when it comes to women and money.
So when you're looking at the control of income and women becoming financially independent, there's a lot of resistance from men in particular around that. And part of that is because of how manhood is defined. A lot of attributions of maleness has to do with income and how rich you are and how wealthy you are. And so we live in a culture that tells men, gather up your income, build your income base, and get rich so that you can get that car or that wife or whatever. The commentary for women is, don't be too ambitious. You know, be a nurturer. Take care of your kids. Don't be difficult, And so all of these sorts of cultural narratives that are gendered around how we're socialized really inform, number one, the appetite of women to be aggressive. A lot of women don't want to offend people. They don't want to make their husband feel threatened because, she's financially more independent. And I have friends who have told me that some marriages have broken when the woman becomes the rich one in the relationship. So she married as the poor one, and then her career goes a lot faster than the husband, and it becomes a real crisis in the home. So I think there are things that are going on externally where we live in a patriarchal society where men are given that privilege and that role of being the rich ones. And so as a result, women are not trusted with income. You need some man to guide your decision making when it comes to income making. And also there's a fundamental problem around women controlling their income. A lot of women do make money, but do they control it? And the other thing, just before I finish, is that there has been a study done by the Grameen Bank that indicates that when you do empower women financially, things like domestic violence increase, because that is how threatened men feel. So we need to have a conversation where we push for the economic empowerment of women, but there's a big conversation around men and getting men to change their mindsets and look at women as partners on the journey of financial, empowerment, rather than viewing, an empowered financial woman as a threat to his manhood.
We have the men here to respond to that, Dio. And it seems to be a perception and cultural issue, when it comes to women managing money. But from a man's perspective, what's your take on that?
I really think that it's a pure perception, and maybe because of our cultural setup, that we think that women cannot manage their finances well. But the reality is, as some of us have said about, speaking about the pyramid, where women are at that lower level, it's actually at that lower level that we have more resources. And women are spending their resources on communities and their families, as opposed to us men who look like, I just want to, progress with my career as an individual and not focus on my family most of the time. So yes, there is a bigger need for women to be more empowered. And I like in the education sector, the challenge of how can you study business studies and you're discussing money and you don't even have a shilling in class. So why can't we then make this education experiential, where if you're discussing financial matters and you are bringing young ladies and of course men in class, then there has to be money so that I know how do I make this 1 shilling to grow into 2 or 3 shillings.
Let's talk about the corporate space, because oftentimes you feel, women there are fine. But the reality is they're still very much undervalued, underpaid, which now brings in that whole conversation of the gender pay gap that we see. Wikali, you've been in the HR space for a long time. You know these numbers very, very well. What is contributing to this, and specifically to the issue of the pay wage gap? Why are we seeing something like that? And of course, we've seen that argument being taken in the US and the UK, and not enough here in Kenya, but at least in your view and what you've seen and experienced, what could be contributing to that?
I think the gender pay gap is a real threat at the workplace, and it's been going on for a long time now. I'm very glad that at least it's being given the awareness that it needs to be given for it to be addressed. And the way it manifests itself, you find that you have a job that is being performed by a man and a woman, same qualifications, same job, same everything. But when it comes to the pay, you find the man is earning more. And please, I'm not talking about salary and equitability, because there will always be that in terms of experience and in terms of qualifications, but I'm talking about a job that, if you look at the job description, is the same. If you go and talk to many HR people, this is a problem I think many of them don't understand even at this point in time. But it is there. You will find the woman will earn less than the man. And the question would be, sometimes when you ask and you try to investigate, you find people say the woman didn't ask for, that is the salary they asked for. If that is the salary they asked for, you shouldn't pay, you should pay what you think they are worth. Because in every job, in an organization, there is what you call a job evaluation that determines the structure of a job, and then you determine what it is worth. And so they say the men are aggressive. Yes, they come and demand more, and that is true. But it is up to the person who is giving that salary really to use their knowledge and the justice that is required to pay correctly. Yeah. But then you also find, in terms of growth, because it's also not about money, you find when women are promoted, sometimes maybe you are just put at the bottom of the next salary structure, I think we need to raise our voices, and when you get intelligence of information, what other people are paid, use it. I think we shouldn't feel ashamed as women that we are negotiating for a better pay at workplace. We should really use information. I have worked in HR and I've seen many men come and approach, and sometimes they'll tell you so-and-so is paid this and this, and you're almost asking, how did you get the data? Hardly do you find women coming to use that information, because they don't want to be seen like I went out of my way to look for information that I shouldn't be looking at. But men are not ashamed, and so when you have the information, come and use it and negotiate a better pay, and should never feel ashamed to ask to be paid what you're worth. Right. Let it be the burden of the employer to say, I really can't pay you, and let them demonstrate to you that they are not able to pay you. And if you feel that you're not being paid what you're worth, then look for another job, because out there will be somebody who believes in your skills. I think in every situation where you have women at the corporate, they're almost held to higher standards than men, which is wrong. I mean, it's like they're expected to do more to prove themselves. And why should it be that? I mean, all I need to do is do my job and do it well and excel. Right. And if I excel, the rewards should come. A great leader looks for all those connections and actually promotes the idea from where it came from. So there's a lot to be done.
And Nzetsi, you actually have a term for that when the idea is taken.
Bro-appropriating. There are two things. One is bro-appropriating, which is what she's talking about, when a man literally takes your idea and then pretends it was his. Then there's another one called heap-eating, where you say something, then a man repeats it. It's like, oh, he's brilliant, listen to him. So there are all these cultural things in the work setting where men are congratulated for things they didn't even do. Right. Yet the women is there saying, that was my idea,
And then you're right, when women are held to a higher standard, in fact, I was reading a study in Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, and she said how when it comes to promotions, women are considered off of performance while men off of potential. So we also need to kind of look at those dynamics. I see a question there or a comment in the audience. We'll be right back though. Let's take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. During the break, everyone goes into mini meetings, which shows that there's still a lot to be talked about when it comes to this issue of women economic empowerment. But we had a comment here.
I also wanted to contribute on the unpaid care work and emotional labor that women do that is rarely quantified. In a normal household, you'll find the mother waking up at 5 to prepare the children and make sure the husband is ready for work. But usually this labor is not quantified. We need to find a way to quantify and put an economic value to the economic work and unpaid care work that women do.
And too, I want to get your take on that. Should we share those responsibilities and, of course, quantify what women do in the home?
This is what we call the tragedy of commons. And when you look at women, they are the backbone of this country, and they're more than the men. And so what is happening is that they are bearing the brunt of individual impulses of men. So that all these decisions that men make at the top affect the women all the way to the bottom. And even for me as a musician whose target, my music, the biggest target audience is the women, it affects me because if I do not have a population of women that, who are able to afford my music, it means as an artist I suffer. And so what we have is that we sort of have optimum, gains for short term, but it's not optimal for everyone. When we stand up for women's rights, it does nothing to your value as a man. You are from a woman, so your first instinct the same way your mother's instinct to take care of you is to take care of the woman. So it's quite important also for the men at the top to also understand that every decision they make affects the women at the bottom. And I really have to also bring this again to this perspective and say that I feel now how women feel in boardroom meetings, and not so that I feel that I'm less valued here, but it's the understanding that even in women's issues in the office, that the men will take most of the control in terms of what the women should achieve in the office, and those decisions are made by men for women. And that really has to change.
When you talk about women empowerment, I'm yet to see an honest conversation that would go end to end without defending why men have to be empowered without bringing women as their subject of discussion. Like, what is the 100% reason a man needs to be empowered? But what are the 1,000 reasons that we all know that a woman needs to be empowered on? All these issues about women empowerment are issues that affect women firsthand, and so these are things that need to be talked about.
Absolutely. Way forward, how do we deal with a lot of the obstacles and the hindrances that we've seen come out in the conversation? And one, of course, when it comes to, especially specific to economic, because of course that's what we're talking about, procurement. The government gave at least 30% of procurement opportunities to youth, women, and people living with disabilities. And that's something you've been very passionate about. I know Banu and Wanjiru as well, but if you can just speak to that in terms of, are women really benefiting from that? Is that really an empowerment track for women economically? And if not, what are some of the improvements when it comes to an opportunity like AGPO?
Procurement is the last bit of the conversation when we're talking about business. It's a market, but you have to front end the conversation and talk about entrepreneurship. What is your business? But now you'll find people saying, when you ask them, they say, oh, I want to be in procurement. They equate registration of a business with getting tenders from government. So you ask them, what business are you in, or what do you want to tender in? They say anything. We are having people tendering without knowing even how a tender form looks like. People run and register a company, then they go, and without experience, expect to get a tender from government or the private sector or from whomever. And then over-focus on AGPO. AGPO is just a market. The government procurement is just one market. But then you can't really expect an organization, a multinational, a bank, whatever, to give you work without ever having done work, because we are not focusing on entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of young people running around thinking, if I put in this tender, I'll make 1 million shillings. Wapi. You'll make 20 to 30% on that job. Some of that money will go back into your operational costs. So we need to be very practical when you're talking about entrepreneurship. It's not for everyone, and it's not always an answered prayer in terms of generating income that is sustainable for you and your family.
For me, it's again going back to women's access to markets, different types of markets. And we know from studies done globally that less than 1%, as you say, of women-owned businesses are able to penetrate huge lucrative markets such as those, the government supply chain, the private sector supply chain, and other supply chains. The question is why? Why is that the case? And this is where organizations like UN Women has worked over the past couple of years, I think 4+ years now, to really understand the why. And for me, I think AGPO works actually. We have invested heavily in understanding the why, and then mitigating those barriers, looking at where are the bottlenecks, how can we address these bottlenecks, and how can we prepare women to be more procurement ready.
As we wrap up, just closing comments in terms of solutions, where we headed, what we should do in terms of addressing the issues of the women in formal and the formal sectors. And there's
a lot of stuff you have to get into when you're trying to get people to become formal so that they can win either national government or county government contracts. So I think looking at working with female entrepreneurs to build their productivity and profitability, help them through the formalization process, build business mentorship into that, so that more and more women are running legit businesses that can get the government contracts. I think in the formal sector, we need to help men and women unpack the subtle ways through which women are undermined. We've talked about appropriating, we've talked about heap-eating, there's also man interrupting. Women are disproportionately interrupted in management and board meetings by men who just speak over the woman and act like what she was saying was completely irrelevant. So I think some self-consciousness around it. But I think women need to amplify other women's voices. When you see a woman being interrupted, you need to say, hang on, let her finish her point. When you see a woman's idea being taken, you say, no, but she's the one who made that point. So why don't you tell us more about that idea? So I think women also in the formal space need to become allies and really amplify the strengths that they're bringing to the table in the formal sector.
Great.
For women to grow, we need to stay in jobs. I look at my career and I'm where I am because somebody mentioned my name somewhere, and simply because I had done a good job somewhere else. So my experience is speaking for itself, and when my name is mentioned and I get an opportunity to do something or to do a job, I do it well. I don't let the person who mentioned it down. And so it goes on like that. And how many people do we each lift every day in our life? How many women are we helping grow in their careers?
Christine, what in your view are some of the solutions we need to look at?
In KWFT, where I work, we also try to bring in many solutions to the life of a woman, because it's not only financing to run the business, but also financing probably to improve her life where she lives. We have products, we call them home improvement products. Probably she just needs a better roof over her head. She could also probably need one dairy cow. So we have, products leaning towards agriculture. We need to hold each other, support each other, praise each other. When we are criticizing, we also need to criticize each other, but positively, because we have a lot of challenges in terms of, our attitudes. Do we feel like we are up to the task? We say we want to sit at the table, but when we sit at the table, what do we do? As a general manager where I work, I have a responsibility to make sure that I nurture the next woman manager or next probably woman director. So, that I think is very important, because the more we are at that table, the louder and stronger our voice will be.
The problem with us women is that we are our own worst enemies. I will see a woman succeeding, and somehow I will not want to talk to that woman. I will not try to encourage her and try to learn things from her, because I feel some type of way. So I think women, we also need to drop that. We need to drop it. Because if another woman succeeds, I also succeed. That is one thing that we really need to know. Because women, we are smart. If you find me doing something wrong, tell me this is wrong, but we can do it this other way. Everyone needs a mentor, someone you look up to. And you also, as a person, need to get other people that you can also mentor, because you also need to learn from those people that you mentor. We all need each other.
Men form the bigger part of the boardroom. And this is the right time for women now to get into that boardroom and be part of those policies, because we know where the shoe hurts. When it comes to property ownership, again, back to the Constitution, we are covered. How many of us have gone through that document? The Constitution, by the way, it's so big, but have we actually gone through to get to understand I'm covered up to this part? Right now it is 50-50. Men have taken a sit back. Once they realized it is 50-50, let the woman, if the woman gets access to property, ata mimi niko covered as a man. So the man has taken a back seat. But that should not let the woman drag her feet back when it comes to owning property. We are covered by the Constitution. Let us go for it.
That's all the time we have. However, we'll have an extended part of this conversation that will show up on our YouTube channels. You can get the full discussion right there on YouTube. And of course, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of my guests. Very important points coming out of here, and I hope some that are challenging those who are watching. Of course, this is the precursor to the Nation Leadership Forum coming up next Thursday. Make sure you tune in for that conversation as well, and ensure that you're educated on matters women empowerment. It's not just for women, it's for all of us. We all benefit when women are empowered. Thank you so much to the Tribe Hotel for hosting us. But before we wrap up, let's take a look at the Victoria's Lounge story series brought to you by Nivea.
My name is Michelle Ntalami. I am 33 years old. I was brought up in Nairobi. I grew up in Riara. We're a family of 4 children, and then my mom and my dad. First of all, I actually went to Loreto Convent Valley Road, LCVR, and then Consolata Primary School. And then I went for my high school in Loreto Limuru. I went to do my undergrad in Bachelor of Arts in graphic design and communication or advertising. I moved on to do my Master of Arts in Italy in interior design and brand communication. I also studied CIM, that's Chartered Institute of Marketing, with a Chartered Institute of Marketing UK. So I'm actually currently one of the youngest chartered marketers in the country. You're like gorgeous, you're like hot. Marini Naturals is inspired by my family, more specifically my father, who got unwell in 2013. I wanted to live more naturally and healthier because he was juicing a lot, we're blending a lot of foods for him. We are the first Kenyan natural hair care line. This is the reason I started this product. It smells amazing. So when I started, I wasn't so sure what the response would be because, you know, as with everything in life where you're the pioneer, it could fail or it could fly. So we weren't very sure, but I decided to take that leap of faith. And thankfully it flew. The first challenge I even overcame is actually starting Marini, like actually doing it. I took the leap and I said, you know what? If I don't try, then I will always fail. But if I try, there's a 50% chance of succeeding. Every time you fail, it's actually a little bit of success, adding up to your end goal, whatever that end goal is. I always say this, the road less traveled often leads to the most beautiful destinations, yeah? If you move with a flock, you're not really gonna end up anywhere special. But if you decide, look, I'm gonna take this path that's less beaten and I'm gonna see what's in it for me, then you are literally setting yourself up for success. So I think the future is bright. I want to encourage women that this market is so big. It should not be just Michelle doing a natural hair care line. Love yourself as you are, naturally, beautifully as God made you. Believe in your dreams, believe in your goals. Don't be afraid about what people say, what people think about failure. There's nothing like failure. You can only know what's on the other side if you cross it. So for me, a strong woman is someone who's able to, she knows where to spend her energy on. She's principled, she knows what defines her, she knows her values, she knows what she can and cannot take. And of course, she's naturally beautiful in and out. For media, yes.
All right, great. And that does it for Victoria's Lounge. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Remember, the extended part of this conversation comes up on our YouTube channel where you can get everything that was said, even behind the scenes. So you'll be treated to that as well. Thanks for watching. Have a lovely night.